Picture a world governed by sorcery, and standing at the top of the food chain are 13 prestigious archdemons governing the realm. But when the oldest of the 13 suddenly pass, their belongings are sold off, and a new archdemon needs to be crowned. Interestingly enough, one of the goods ends up being a gorgeous elf slave. But the question is, what secrets is this cursed elf hiding? Starting our story, we see Chasteel Lilkvist being attacked by her knight Myers. But having ripped off Myers' face, Chasteel realizes the face stealer sorcerer has robbed Myers' body, trembling in fear as she hears the face stealer teasing and taunting her. As the face stealer prepares to torture Chasteel, our MC Zagan appears, holding up the face stealer by the skull. Zagan is pissed he was awoken by all the commotion, crushing the face stealer's skull before they can plead for forgiveness. With some blood being splattered onto Chasteel, she suddenly faints, scaring Zagan as he wonders how he can rectify things. Coming up with an idea, Zagan casts a rewind spell, undoing all the mental scarring done to Chasteel along with the face stealer, hoping that the girl will think she was dreaming all along. Inspecting Chasteel's silver cross pendant, Zagan realizes she belongs to the church and is an enemy of all sorcerers, but seeing as he's saved an enemy, Zagan reasons he should leave the girl out on the road somewhere to get her out of his sights. Preparing a translocation spell, Zagan suddenly notices his magic being interfered with, turning only to greet Barbados, who has entered his land just to taunt him. Barbados notices Zagan had saved someone from the face stealer sorcerer, reminding Zagan that sorcerers only care about themselves and obtaining power, but surprisingly Chasteel does have a decent amount of mana stored in her. Before Barbados can sacrifice her to gain more power, Zagan swiftly sends her away, choosing to head back to bed to catch up on sleep. Barbados wonders why Zagan doesn't just wake himself up with some magic, seeing as body manipulation is fundamental in sorcery, even granting sorcerers a limit of 1,000 years to live. Seeing Zagan not paying attention, Barbados utters that Archdemon Marcosius has passed, something monumental as the title of Archdemon grants a sorcerer immense amounts of mana. On top of that, Archdemons are regarded as the pinnacle of sorcery, able to command lower-tier sorcerers. Of the 13 Archdemons, Marcosius had lived for a millennium, but due to his passing, Barbados mentions that there will be a huge auction in Keanoides, Marcosius' territory, and most importantly, the title of Archdemon will be on sale. As the duo head through town, Zagan realizes Barbados wants to borrow money to buy the Archdemon title, even offering Zagan some hot ladies in exchange for his help, but Zagan could care less about girls. At that moment, Zagan notices the town's knights rallying together. Something Barbados points out is due to a lunatic sorcerer kidnapping young women for their experiments. But Zagan knows eventually the church will intervene. Zagan suspects that the lunatic may be trying to summon a demon, but brushing that aside for now, the duo head deep underground. Barbados says summoning magic takes multiple people, something Zagan can't pull off since he's always alone. Entering the auction, the pair take their seats, making note of Chimeris the Black Blade, Grimory the Enchantress, Veil for the Apparition, all people worthy of inheriting the Archdemon title along with Barbados himself, of course. Zagan learns that it's ultimately up to the other 12 Archdemons to debate who inherits the title next. But at the same time, we see Chimeris and Grimory chatting about Barbados, the Purgatory, and Zagan, intrigued to see Zagan was another Archdemon candidate to be elected even though he has no title. As the auction reaches its climax, the announcer draws everyone's attention to the next item they're selling, revealing an elf from the Northern Holy Lands. With a single glance, Zagan is captivated by the elf's beauty, noting the elf's platinum hair along with her abundant mana pool. With the bid opening, Zagan immediately offers up 1 million gold curiotes, shocking everyone. But Zagan says a strange feeling in his chest had commanded him to buy the elf slave. Heading onto the stage to collect the elf, Zagan hesitates to remove her collar, seeing as it restricts the slave from running away along with suppressing their mana. But the announcers reveal that they too don't know how to remove the elf's collar. Zagan hears that the elf has been preserved in place, excited to hear the elf speak, but this weirds everyone out. That night, Zagan takes the elf home, panicking as he doesn't know how to speak to her. Racking his brain on how to break the ice, Zagan suddenly hears the elf girl asking how she will be killed. But Zagan wonders where the elf may have come up with something so gruesome. Zagan rushes to reassure the elf that she won't be killed, but the elf wonders what torture she'll be placed through. With some silence following the room, the elf introduces herself as Nephilia, a name Zagan finds beautiful, especially since it can be shortened to Nephi, an even cuter name. Zagan wonders where Nephi's family are, but Nephi utters that she is a cursed child and still a virgin, something Zagan didn't need to know. When Nephi asks why she was purchased, Zagan conceals the fact that he is in love with her, instead calming his nerves as he gives Nephi a room to stay in. Hearing Nephi still believes that she will be tortured and slain, Zagan sympathizes with Nephi's upbringing, suspecting that she was taken away and chained up at a young age and was told she would be experimented on and disposed of. Zagan does wonder why Nephi refuses to elaborate on her cursed child title. But reflecting on his own life, Zagan never knew his parents and was raised without a home as well. Zagan utters that he needs Nephi, something that touches her heart as Zagan orders Nephi to live for him. Showing Nephi to her room, Zagan hears that Nephi doesn't mind heights, both heading up some stairs only for Nephi to trip. Reacting quickly, Zagan catches and helps Nephi up a spiral staircase, flustered as he's holding onto Nephi's soft and warm hands. Reaching an empty room, Zagan shows Nephi the space, but upon seeing the room filled with hundreds of skulls and a guillotine, Zagan swiftly changes his mind. Wanting to make things up to Nephi, Zagan casts a quick spell to eradicate the things in the terrifying room, both entering the room only to note its dreary atmosphere. Seeing the room leading to a balcony, Nephi is speechless as she reaches out to the moon, something that confuses Zagan. Nephi thanks Zagan for a place to stay, something that warms Zagan's heart as it's been a while since he's been thanked, both staring off into the night sky as they've grown closer as master and servant. The next morning, Zagan is shown to have stayed up all night, watching over Nephi as she slept beside his throne. Feeling hungry, Zagan heads off to prepare some breakfast, all whilst Nephi wakes up, but seeing Zagan return with a drink, Nephi remembers to greet Zagan as her master. With Zagan not used to morning greetings, they both sit down for some jerky and milk, but Nephi is surprised Zagan is eating the same thing as herself, grateful to be considered an equal by Zagan. Zagan accidentally confuses Nephi's gratefulness for her judging the breakfast she's been served, revealing that he's eaten jerky for breakfast ever since he was young and homeless. But Nephi speaks up, offering to cook something for them. Ecstatic, Zagan and Nephi suit up, both choosing to head into town for some groceries. But needing a ride into town, Zagan is reminded that he used up all his money to purchase Nephi and can't pay the carriage driver 3 bronze pieces. Choosing to walk to town, Zagan wonders if he can sell items in his castle to earn more cash, wondering if he should have mugged the carriage driver, but holds back fearing the Nephi would judge him. As Zagan suppresses any naughty thoughts he has of Nephi, our duo suddenly turn to see the carriage driver along with its passengers being mugged by some bandits, but Zagan hesitates to intervene. Seeing Nephi traumatized by the attack, Zagan fires off a warning shot to the bandits. But when the boss of the bandits rushes Zagan with their axe, Zagan surprises everyone when he catches the axe, shattering it only to flick away the boss. Seeing Zagan as a formidable opponent, the bandits call for their backup, all watching as a hired mage appears. The mage is impressed to see a fellow sorcerer helping others, but getting to work, the mage swiftly consumes the battlefield with a fire spell. Spotting the mage trying to sneakily cast another spell with a magic circle, Zagan counters by dispelling the fire first. But when the mage attempts to activate his magic circle, Zagan reveals that he has taken control of the magic circle, using it to fire a lightning bolt at the mage. Turning to the bandits, Zagan scares off the men, turning to reassure Nephi that everything is fine now. But Nephi is clearly speechless. Nephi is amazed at Zagan's skills, something that prompts the carriage driver along with its other passengers to ask Zagan to help protect them whilst they ride into town, offering up a bag of silver. Zagan is surprised at how well he's being treated, seeing as sorcerers are normally the bad guys, but seeing Nephi being treated so well, Zagan agrees to protect the carriage. As the duo ride on the back of the carriage, Nephi asks why Zagan would help others. But knowing he only wanted to show off to Nephi, Zagan instead utters that he had to dominate some bandit scum. Having made it to town, Zagan asks if Nephi wants anything, but seeing as Nephi is okay with using anything lying around in the castle, they set their sights on some groceries. Entering a clothing store, Manuela reluctantly greets Zagan, seeing as he's a sorcerer, but seeing as Nephi is in need of a fit, Manuela sparks up. Manuela does make note of Nephi's collar, but as Manuela drags Nephi off to get changed, she gleefully reveals a kinky outfit that makes Zagan blush. Zagan demands that Manuela give Nephi a more normal outfit, watching as the girls re-enter the changing room only to unveil a nicely suited maid outfit. Manuela says the boots have healing magic applied to them to help with exhaustion, but fearing that Manuela may give her another revealing dress, Nephi graciously accepts the maid outfit. As the duo leaves, Manuela pulls Nephi aside, whispering that Zagan really does care for her, but having visited a blacksmith, Zagan asks if Nephi's collar can be removed. Nephi is surprised at the sudden request, but Zagan reasons that the collar shows that Nephi is still Archdemon Marcosius's property, something that flusters Nephi. Taking a look at the collar, the blacksmith recognizes the collar to be ensorcelled, meaning it is trapped, and if not removed properly will take Nephi's head off. Seeing as the blacksmith isn't qualified, Zagan hears that he needs a key to unlock the collar, an item most likely still in Marcosius's manor. Thanking the blacksmith for the advice, Zagan goes to pay for the intel, but the blacksmith refuses the money, reminding Zagan that he had saved him in the past. The blacksmith utters that Zagan had protected him and his daughter from a monster once, but Zagan reasons that he must have saved the blacksmith by accident. With Zagan heading off, he is weirded out by how nice people are to him, all whilst the blacksmith thinks about how warm and approachable Zagan seems lately. Spending the rest of the day shopping for groceries, but seeing as the sun is setting, Zagan treats Nephi to some homely tavern food. Nephi reminds Zagan that she can simply run away if her collar were to be removed, but even though Zagan knows it's a possibility, he still wants to rid Nephi of the collar. Seeing Nephi staring at her food, Zagan asks what's on her mind, hearing that Nephi has never been given such luxurious food before, seeing as she was a slave from a very young age. Zagan suspects that Nephi and himself are the same, having both been born with nothing, but as Nephi reaches for a tomato with her fork, she embarrassingly fails to pick it up. Using a spoon instead, Nephi indulges in the tomato's taste, which brings a smile to Zagan's face. Funnily enough, Zagan fails to pick up a tomato with his fork as well, prompting Nephi to personally feed Zagan a tomato, both quivering quietly. Nephi takes the chance to ask if she can do things that will benefit Zagan moving forward. But as Zagan accepts Nephi's proposal, Zagan repays the favor by feeding Nephi a tomato. Upon hearing other customers giggling at the lovebirds, they both hurriedly rush home. But the next day, we follow Chastile, who is revealed to be a knight. Chastile knows that her dream of her being attacked by a sorcerer only to be saved by another was real, revealing that she was on a mission to save some kidnapped women from some evil sorcerers, but was suddenly attacked by one of her angelic knights who was actually a face stealer in disguise. Luckily, Chastile was saved by Zagan, but she wonders why Zagan looked so lonely. Out of nowhere, Lord Clavel checks in on Chastile, reminding Chastile to drop the formalities, seeing as she is the chosen hero. Chastile apologizes for losing 4 angelic knights in her previous mission, but Clavel reassures Chastile that it's fine, instead revealing that their investigations have led them to believe that Zagan himself must be behind the kidnappings of several girls. Although Chastile refuses to believe Zagan is that type of sorcerer, Clavel reiterates that sorcerers are pure evil, prompting Chastile, the leader of the Angelic Knights, to volunteer her sacred sword to be the one to spearhead the next mission. Flashing back, we see a younger Zagan being tormented by a sorcerer, reminded of a marking placed on his palm. Waking up on his throne, Zagan spots Nephi warmly greeting him, only to announce that she's prepared breakfast for them. Hearing that Nephi had been waiting a while for Zagan to wake up, Zagan manages to give Nephi a morning greeting as well, heading into the dining hall only to be amazed it has been transformed. Seeing bread had been served, Zagan praises Nephi for being able to create such a precious food item. But Zagan also notices Nephi's ears twitching at all the praise she's receiving. Sitting down, Zagan hears that Nephi only prepared food for one person, but instantly Zagan offers up half of his meal, even ordering Nephi to sit on his lap to eat at the same time as him. As the two take turns feeding each other, we cut to several days later where Zagan is busy studying. But when Nephi enters the room, she asks what the magic circles inscribed onto the pieces of paper are. Zagan is surprised that Nephi can't use elven sorcery, even though she is much more potent mana than average. But Zagan simply utters that magic symbols are the foundation of magic. Apparently, the symbols could represent the language of the gods or an emblem pact with the demons. But regardless, a symbol encased in a circle creates a blueprint known as a magic circle. As Zagan infuses the magic circle with mana, some lightning bolts emerge, impressing Nephi. Zagan adds that more symbols can be added and the overall shape and size of the magic circle can be altered to produce different effects, showing off an even greater lightning spell. Zagan points out that magic circles alone can be used by anyone, explaining how he was able to take over another mage's magic circle. But by adding a restriction to only allow the original creator of the magic circle to use it, sorcerers create a new magic circle called Circuit. Nephi wonders if the center of a magic circle could be packed with symbols, impressing Zagan as he reveals that adding a second circle into the center of an existing spell would normally disrupt both spells. But if a sorcerer can fully control their mana flow, such a thing would be possible. Nephi realizes that someone who could add their spell to an existing spell could technically cancel out any spell. Someone Zagan confirms would be completely invincible, but Zagan states that such a thing is purely theoretical. Nephi wonders if anyone can learn sorcery if they have the knowledge, learning that knowledge is king among sorcerers and is an item normally protected. Zagan chooses to tease Nephi a bit for being so curious, but Nephi gets excited seeing as Zagan is so willing to share such valuable information. But Nephi does wonder what Zagan plans to do with such knowledge and power. Zagan admits he never really thought about it, since he only wants to survive, revealing that he grew up with nothing and had to steal to survive. But one day, he was captured by a sorcerer. Luckily for Zagan, he managed to slay the sorcerer that captured him, and ever since grew stronger to fend for his own. A tragic tale that Nephi empathizes with, seeing as she could never fend for herself. Seeing Nephi so vulnerable, Zagan offers to teach Nephi more on sorcery, but suddenly Zagan detects intruders on his property. Seeing as he'll have to deal with the intruders, Zagan warmly asks Nephi to start preparing dinner for the both of them. But as we cut to Chastille and her 3 knights, they all report that a barrier is protecting Zagan's property. Unsheathing her sacred blade, Chastille easily cuts down the spell protecting Zagan's castle. But right on cue, Zagan appears annoyed that people are visiting without his knowledge. Spotting Chastille's blade, Zagan recognizes it as one of 12 sacred blades that slain the Lord of Fiends, weapons that are idolized by the church. Zagan does wonder why a young girl is wielding such a powerful weapon, suddenly remembering that she was the girl he had rescued prior. Wanting the knights to leave, Zagan fires off a warning shot, but instantly the knights form a barrier to protect Chastille. Zagan is impressed by the knights' reinforced armor, but seeing one of the knights rushing him with an axe and shield, Zagan rails the knight with a devastating fist, easily knocking out the attacker. Although Zagan gives the knights another chance to leave, a sword-wielding knight chooses to attack, but Zagan easily severs the knight's blade only to knock them out with a flick. Before Chastille can attack herself, Zagan holds one of the knights hostage, convincing Chastille to lay down her blade. Zagan reminds Chastille that he'll allow her to turn tail and run home alone, but calling Zagan's bluff, Chastille picks up her blade only to rush towards Zagan. Swiftly erecting a barrier, Zagan has his shield shattered in an instant by the sacred sword, noting how Chastille's armor is empowering her strikes. As Zagan continues to dodge Chastille's strikes, Chastille demands to know why Zagan isn't fighting back. But Zagan notes how close in age Nephi is to Chasteel, refusing to hurt such a young girl. Chasteel cries that sorcery is used to oppress others, but Zagan fires back by stating that Chasteel's armor and sword could easily be used for the same evil acts, triggering Chasteel as she slashes at Zagan, but Zagan evades only to pin down Chasteel's blade. Zagan calls out Chasteel for being a hypocrite, but even though Chasteel doesn't deny it, she forcibly pulls her blade out from Zagan's feet, only to thrust it through Zagan's barrier. Luckily, Zagan had caught the blade with his palms, but unleashing the true power of her blade, Chasteel manages to toss Zagan around, even restricting his healing with her blade. As Chasteel rushes in for the killing blow, Zagan quickly catches the blade, declaring that Chasteel must die, but surprisingly Chasteel offers to fake Zagan's death if Zagan is willing to return to being a normal human after. Zagan is surprised that an angelic knight is helping a sorcerer, but Chasteel could tell that Zagan never intended to slay her knights, plus she still needs to pay Zagan back for saving her life. Zagan knows that Chasteel will be heavily punished if the church found out about her helping a sorcerer, but before Zagan can think of something else, Nephi cries out for Zagan. Seeing as Nephi is with Zagan, one of Chasteel's knights tosses a spear at Nephi, but with no other choice, Zagan rushes to tackle Nephi out of the way, using his palm to absorb the strike. With Zagan reassuring Nephi that he's fine, a sudden cold breeze can be felt in the surrounding air, revealed to be Nephi, who unveils her powers, pissed that her master has been hurt. In mere moments, Nephi orders for hundreds of roots to bind and constrict the knights, but luckily Zagan stops her before things get out of hand. That night, Nephi patches up Zagan's wounds, relieved that Chasteel and her knights had retreated for now. When Zagan asks about the power Nephi used, Nephi states that it's not magic, refusing to elaborate further. Zagan asks if Nephi was scared, surprising Nephi as she hears Zagan isn't scared of her true powers, choosing to reveal that she is capable of mysticism. Zagan recognizes mysticism as a talent granted only to a rare breed of people that exceeds ordinary sorcery, but Nephi utters that she was only able to use it due to her cursed elf status. Nephi cries that elves with white hair shouldn't exist, nor should her powers be used, uttering that when her village was attacked, her village demanded that she protect them with her powers, but having been shunned by her village for so long, Nephi allowed herself to be captured, all whilst her village was left to fend for herself. Nephi admits that she had purposely let the people who bullied her die, but having regretted the action, Nephi had accepted the role of slave as punishment for the rest of her life. Seeing Nephi breaking down, Zagan states he would have slain the village along with the attackers himself, surprising Nephi as she still feels guilty. Zagan reminds Nephi that her cursed past is long behind her, plus her mysticism is a blessing that gives her immense strength. Zagan reminisces on a past memory when he had saved a girl, but when Zagan had asked the girl to grow stronger to fend for herself, the girl replied that she wants to remain weak and be protected. Zagan knew the girl was spoiled from birth and doesn't blame such a girl to be relying on others, but for people like Zagan and Nephi that need to grow stronger to survive, they must learn to fend for themselves. Zagan reminds Nephi that she belongs to him, and hence he'll accept her for who she is, something that hits home with Nephi as she begins breaking down into tears. Having calmed down a bit, Nephi thanks Zagan for being so understanding, but when Zagan checks on his wounds, he's surprised to see they've all been healed. Zagan realizes that simply touching Nephi was enough to heal him, but as the two head off to bed, Zagan awakes in the middle of the night, hearing that Nephi wants to sleep together with him. Embarrassed, Zagan suppressed his naughty thoughts, finding it adorable that Nephi is worried he won't get good sleep whilst resting in his throne. Sadly, Zagan states that he can't leave the room, seeing as it's the central point of his castle, but Nephi instead offers Zagan a lap pillow. Immediately accepting the offer, Zagan hears Nephi is simply repaying Zagan for his kind words earlier, reminding Zagan to offer to teach Nephi more sorcery, seeing as she still struggles to control her mysticism. Hearing that she can protect her master if she learns to control her mysticism, Nephi immediately accepts, something Zagan finds adorable, but Neffy does feel bad seeing how sad Zagan looked when he told his story earlier. As Neffy gives Zagan a warm hug, Zagan tears up for a moment. But as we cut to the next day, we see Barbados rushing to check on Zagan, having heard he was attacked by the Angelic Knights. Barbados is impressed Zagan survived when the knight was wielding a sacred sword. But having been served some tea by Neffy, Barbados demands to know why she hasn't been sacrificed yet, accusing Zagan of doing unspeakable things to her. Sadly, Zagan corrects Barbados, stating that Neffy is his apprentice, something that convinces Barbados to back off. Barbados asks if Zagan is after the Archdemon's seat, something Zagan knows would be useful to help protect and free Neffy. But seeing as it's only been a decade since he became a sorcerer, Zagan is willing to relinquish the seat to a more qualified sorcerer. Barbados wonders if Zagan has grown soft because of Neffy, but hearing Zagan continue to call her his apprentice, Barbados chooses to leave. Neffy wonders if Zagan considers Barbados a good friend, but changing the topics, the duo head to repair the castle's barrier, only to start on Neffy's sorcery classes. As days pass by, Neffy continues to tidy up the castle, warming Zagan's heart as he appreciates having company for once. But sadly, Neffy's control over her mysticism still isn't so great. With several weeks passing, Zagan is impressed Neffy had managed to craft a decent magic circle, wondering how powerful Neffy would be if her mana was unsealed. But as a month passes by, Zagan suddenly receives a summon from the 12 Archdemons. Leaving for Chianides, the trading hub, Zagan heads underground to Markosia's lair, noting the disturbing atmosphere as he stands before the 12 Archdemons. As the Archdemons speak, their pressure begins overwhelming Zagan, but the Archdemons slowly utter that Zagan is by far the youngest sorcerer they've encountered in a while. But seeing the Archdemons talking amongst themselves, Zagan arrogantly asks to leave. Impressed, the Archdemons reveal that Zagan has been elected to inherit the 13th seat, showing off the Archdemon brand that Markosia's left behind. The Archdemons state that the emblem will grant Zagan immense power. Power Zagan can sense is on par with the 12 Archdemons. But Zagan demands to know why he was selected out of everyone. The Archdemons state that the first sorcerer Zagan slain, Andrus the Accursed, was no pushover, yet Zagan managed to defeat the man at only 8 years old. The Archdemons reveal that they know of Zagan's ability to perceive and copy any spell with a single glance, something Zagan wished he kept more secretive, but the Archdemons have recognized such a skill worthy of the Archdemon title. The Archdemons believe that Zagan will become the strongest sorcerer to live, but Zagan wonders why he can't just slay and rob the Archdemons standing before him of their powers as well. As the room erupts in a laughter, a white-hooded Archdemon warns Zagan to be more careful with his threats, reminded that they are able to rid Zagan of Neffy, plus they could strip Zagan of his memories and existence entirely. Overcome with despair, Zagan snaps himself out of his slump, reminding himself that the path of a sorcerer was decided from the very beginning. Seeing as he can't drag Neffy into his dark future, Zagan requests something of the Archdemons. But when the Archdemons gladly comply, Zagan graciously accepts the 13th seat amongst the Archdemons. That night, Neffy prepares some stew only to notice Zagan returning home, gleefully calling out to him. Boldly, Zagan shows off his new status as an Archdemon, something Neffy congratulates Zagan for achieving. Zagan also takes out the key to Neffy's collar, choosing to unlock her collar. But before Neffy can say anything else, Zagan orders Neffy to leave his sights. In mere moments, Neffy awakens in a random alleyway, reminded that Zagan had set her free, but she feels lost seeing as Zagan has abandoned her even though he had promised she could stay with him forever, plus she wanted to see his reaction to his favorite stew. Having been sitting in an alleyway for a while, Neffy hears a voice calling out to her, but seeing as Chastile has randomly discovered her, Neffy reasons that Chastile is here to end her life. Although Chastile says she is only passing by, Neffy insists on being put out of her misery, but as a crowd forms around the girls, they wonder if Neffy is being bothered. Out of nowhere, Manuela appears, demanding Chastile leave Neffy alone, but with the crowd roaring for Chastile to leave, Chastile falls to her knees. Luckily, Nephi defends Chastile, who has already begun crying. But to make up for things, the girls decide to visit the nearby tavern. Manuela suspects that Chastile has evil intentions, but Nephi reassures Manuela that Chastile is fine. When the waitress serves Nephi some food, Nephi apologizes since she doesn't have any money, but Manuela says the meal is on her. Tasting the stew before her, Nephi is reminded of the stew she was about to serve Zagan, uncontrollably breaking into tears as she wonders why Zagan abandoned her. Manuela manages to calm Nephi down by lending her chest to rest, but having satiated her hunger, Nephi explains that Zagan had kicked her out without an explanation. Nephi does mention that Zagan said something about an Archdemon, a title the girls know is only given to the strongest of sorcerers, and that their very town was once protected by Marcosius himself. Sadly, once he passed, strange kidnappings have begun to happen, but Manuela says the church should have caught the face stealers that supposedly were behind the kidnappings. Manuela does point out how annoying it was for the church to demand funds to help with operation cost, accusing Chastile of being no good, but Nephi once again defends Chastile. Chastile reminds the girls that archdemons are the symbol of evil and the sworn enemies of the angelic knights. And seeing as there are only 12 sacred sword for 13 archdemons, the church tends to strike when a new 13th archdemon is elected to ensure an even fight afterwards. Nephi realizes Zagan must be protecting her, but when Chastile asks if Zagan is the one behind the kidnappings, Nephi confidently states that Zagan would never do such a thing, seeing as he tends to protect the weak. Chastile does admit that Zagan was holding back when they fought as well, something that pleased Chastile, but Chastile does utter how Zagan looked very sad when he first saved her. Impressed that someone else recognizes how lonely Zagan was, Nephi grins from cheek to cheek as Nephi says she'll return her master. When the girls try to stop her, Nephi proudly declares that she'll stay by Zagan's side, inspiring Chastile to help escort Nephi, seeing as she suspects someone is impersonating Zagan and kidnapping people. Nephi is surprised that Manuela has helped her resolve her issues, surprised to be considered a friend by Manuela, but Chastile shyly asks if she could be their friend as well. Gladly accepting Chastile as a friend, the three girls hug it out, but out of nowhere Chastile's knights enter the tavern, drawing their swords as Nephi is present. Before the men can attack, a dense ooze engulfs the girls, prompting Manuela to fly away, but the voice of Zagan demands that the knights visit his castle if they want Chastile back. Cutting to later that night, we see Zagan has trapped 3 knights intruding on his land again, reminded of the times he spent with Nephi, but is relieved to know Nephi is at least away from danger. As Zagan turns to leave, one of the knights beg for Chastile to be released, but having no idea what they're saying, Zagan spots Manuela arrive on the scene. Manuela cries that Nephi and Chastile have been kidnapped, shocking Zagan as he blames himself for exposing Nephi to such danger. But Zagan hears Manuela crying out that Nephi deeply cares for Zagan, and it hurts her more to be apart from him. Realizing he was wrong to assume what was best for Nephi, Zagan declares he'll erase whoever lays their hands on Nephi, immediately conjuring a magic circle only to offer Manuela and the knights to join him. Having already identified the culprit, we cut over to Nephi and Chastile, who have awoken chained up to a wall, restricted by collars that negate their mana. With Nephi unable to use her mysticism, the girls suddenly notice a figure approaching, revealed to be Barbatos himself. Nephi thought Barbatos was Zagan's friend, but Barbatos corrects Nephi, revealing that the Andrus, the first sorcerer Zagan ever slayed, was actually Barbatos' master. Barbatos admits that he would have slain his own master if Zagan didn't do it, but Barbatos is jealous of Zagan's castle filled with valuable knowledge along with all the money Zagan had, something Barbatos is deeply jealous of. Barbatos reveals that he had tried assassinating Zagan in the past, but nothing seemed to work. Even a false trail that led the angelic knights to attack Zagan didn't work, making Chastile realize that Barbatos was the one impersonating Zagan. Barbatos orders Chastile to be silent, stating that the face stealers have inspired him to make a sacrifice that will surely grant him the 13th seat amongst the archdemons. But Nephi utters that Zagan has already ascended into an archdemon. Refusing to believe Zagan has already achieved such a feat, Barbados curses Zagan for stealing everything from him, ripping Neffy off the wall only to drag her deeper into the cave. Barbados shows off a magic circle prepared to rival any archdemon. But as Barbados declares Neffy as a tool he'll be using to activate the magic circle, Neffy remembers the valuable time she shared with Zagan, fighting back against Barbados with her might. Neffy declares she'll stick by Zagan's side no matter what, something that pisses Barbados off as he pulls Neffy to the ground. Refusing to give in, Neffy cries that only Zagan is worthy of being her master. But as Barbados casts a black flame, the spell suddenly dissipates as Zagan himself appears, having smashed a hole to Neffy's current location. Zagan starts off by declaring that he had known it was Barbados the moment the Face Stealers infiltrated his land, even though they were incapable of such magic, meaning it must have been Barbados himself, the only person aware of Zagan's security around his castle. Zagan also points out, the purgatory in Barbados' title implies Barbados is capable of summoning and transportation magic, skills convenient for kidnapping. Barbados wonders why Zagan still kept him around, but Zagan utters he was simply curious at what Barbados was planning next. Seeing Neffy pretty beat up, Zagan dashes towards Barbados, evading Barbados' spell only to strike Barbados' arm and leg. With Barbados falling to his knees, Zagan rushes to free Neffy from her chains, rushing into Zagan's arms only to beg Zagan to not live a lonely life. Pissed, Barbados tries firing a spell at Zagan whilst he's distracted, but with a wave of his palm, Zagan dispels all of Barbados' spells. Zagan reveals that he is simply canceling out Barbados' skills by casting the same spell within the existing spell, something Barbados wonders if Andres had taught Zagan. Sadly, Zagan states that Andres never figured such a thing out, uttering that at the age of 8, he saw Andres casting a lightning spell for the first time, choosing to inscribe and replicate the spell onto his palm with blood only to fire the spell at Andres, canceling and slaying Andres with his very own spell. As Barbados prepares a multitude of magic circles, he's shocked to see Zagan negating them as well, especially since some of the spells are originals. Zagan admits that he had dedicated most of his life to sorcery. Even after he was captured and freed, none of the friends he grew up with came to visit him. But strangely enough, Barbados, out of all people, chose to keep Zagan company. Although the boys shared fond memories together, Barbados utters that he was waiting for the right time to slaughter Zagan. But seeing as it's the perfect time, Zagan unveils a spell composed of all the ones he's negated. Barbados realizes that Zagan had not only devoured his spells, but is also using them against him, impressing Zagan as he utters his new given title as Sorcerer Slayer. Having empowered his fist with the compressed spells, Zagan strikes Barbados down with a single punch. Bleeding out on the floor, Barbados knows that Zagan is the best when it comes to physical enhancements, wondering if Zagan can even be defeated now knowing that all spells will be devoured and negated in Zagan's presence. As Zagan marches towards Barbados, Barbados begs to be spared, but refusing to hear anything from his supposed friend, Zagan fires off another empowered punch. With Manuela checking in on Chastile, it's revealed that Zagan had purposely missed his punch, seeing as he'll need Barbados to keep him company in the future. Pissed that Zagan is looking down on him, Barbados declares he'll snuff out Zagan one day. But Zagan welcomes the challenge, declaring he'll accept any challenger, seeing as he'll need to rule over the world to ensure Neffy is safe. Seeing Zagan so confident, Barbados concedes, but out of nowhere, Barbados' magic circle begins to activate. Barbados cries that he wasn't the one who activated it, something Zagan can confirm seeing as his empowered punch must have injected huge amounts of mana into the circle, indirectly activating it. With a huge surge of dense mana overflowing from the circle, Barbados says he was planning on summoning a true demon, a creature that emerges from the circle only to tower over everyone. Apparently, demons were said to be ancient creatures that roamed the world ages ago, but the symbols used for sorcery are the residues of their existence. Seeing the creature up in person, Zagan recognizes the monster to be a shadow, a monster created due to an imperfect summon without a sacrifice. As Zagan faces the creature, he acknowledges the creature to be far greater than any archdemon he's met, comparing it to a god or demon instead. As the creature unveils its palms, it reaches towards Zagan, only to pull back, instead kneeling before Zagan only to declare Zagan as his master. Realizing that his crest is what the monster is serving, Zagan takes the chance to order the creature to disappear, all watching as the monster willingly disappears into the magic circle. As the magic circle itself begins to dissipate, Zagan notices the surrounding cave beginning to crumble, swiftly rushing to gather the girls and allowing Barbados to be dragged along by his cape. Having made it outside, Zagan returns Chastille to the knights, only for them to leave. Before Manuela leaves as well, she asks Zagan and Neffy to make up with each other, leaving only Barbados, who promises to bring over some high-quality booze in exchange for Zagan sparing his life. With only Zagan and Neffy left, Neffy tells Zagan she wants to be by his side forever, but needing to make things up to Neffy, Zagan kneels down only to ask Neffy to stop calling him master. With both parties flustered, Zagan begins spilling out his heart, cursing himself for not being able to express how he truly feels, but just being happy to be by Zagan's side. Neffy asks if Zagan can place the slave collar back on her. With Zagan accepting, they both stare off at the sunrise, all whilst Neffy wonders what their relationship is now that they're not master and slave. Several days later, we see the nearby town in uproar about a new archdemon being crowned, something that Grimoire and Chimeris all acknowledge as exciting, but Valefor doesn't seem to be too pleased. Cutting to Chastille, we see her refusing to further hunt down Zagan, especially since he's saved her life twice. Upset that Chastille is protecting a sorcerer, Clavel officially strips Chastille of an angelic knight title, something Chastille finds disgusting, seeing how corrupt the church is, but seeing as Zagan never backed down from his beliefs, Chastille proudly accepts her punishment. Forced to relinquish her gear and sword, Chastille willingly hands over her sacred sword, watching as Clavel takes it, all whilst feeling a pressure lifted off her shoulders. Clavel asks Chastille to not look so sad, uttering that there will be a time when Chastille will be reinstated, especially since her sacred sword chose her to be its wielder. Chastille is relieved to know Clavel still has fate in her, but Clavel reveals that the strongest of the sacred sword wielders, Raphael Hurandel, will be visiting them, scaring Chastille as she fears what Raphael will do to her when he finds out she had lost her title of sacred sword wielder. The next day, we follow Zagan doing his usual studies, still surprised that his archdemon Brand had forced the otherworldly demon to bow to him. Having been unable to learn anything new from the books Marcoja's left behind, but suddenly spotting Neffy trying to sneak up on him, Zagan plays along. Sadly, Neffy fails to scare Zagan, shriveling up as she admits that she wanted to cheer Zagan up, seeing as he's been too wrapped up in his studies lately. Completely captivated by Neffy's cuteness, Zagan is shown his lunch, completely blown away by the feast Neffy had prepared for him. Zagan wonders what the sauce Neffy is using to accompany the lamb meat, hearing that Manuela had recommended some Caesar dressing created by the sorcerer Caesar Chaldea. As the duo indulge in the scrumptious meal, Neffy announces that they'll have pudding for dessert, but upon tasting the pudding, Zagan's mind continues to be blown. At that moment, Zagan detects something breaking through his castle barrier, choosing to let the attacker be for now. But Valefor himself makes his way through Zagan's defenses. He barges into the dining hall where Zagan is. Recognizing Valefor as one of the archdemon candidates, Valefor states he'll slay Zagan and become the new archdemon, but Zagan glares at Valefor, ordering that he wait until he's finished his meal. Impatient, Valefor unsheaths his claws, rushing Zagan. Zagan easily halts Valefor's advances, all whilst protecting his pudding. Noting Valefor's monster-like body, Zagan notices Valefor prepare to blast him with his breath, but having warned him, Zagan knocks Valefor away with his fists. Seeing Valefor's head fall off, Neffy rushes to check on them, but the duo are shocked to see Valefor is actually a little girl. Zagan is horrified that he hit a girl, both choosing to carry Valefor to a nearby guest room, something Neffy finds endearing. As the duo wait for Valefor to wake up, but seeing Zagan up and close, Valefor throws out a punch, only for it to be caught by Zagan. Zagan orders Valefor to thank Neffy for sparing her life. But Valefor wonders why Zagan would spare her even though they're enemies. But Zagan simply utters Neffy convinced him to. Zagan demands to know why Valefor would attack him. Hearing that Valefor is after power and that claiming the Archdemon title will grant her immense power. Valefor admits that she was aware of Zagan's Sorcerer Slayer title, having tried to use her physical body to overpower Zagan, but sadly no luck. Zagan recognizes Valefor's attack patterns to belong to a dragon, surprised to have encountered one seeing as dragons can live for thousands of years. But seeing Valefor begin to quiver at her secret being exposed, Zagan realizes that Valefor is still only a child. Coming up with a punishment, Zagan orders Valefor to help Neffy around the castle for a week, hoping that he can help guide Valefor onto a more correct path for the future. But Valefor asks if Zagan wants to eat her. Although Zagan has no interest in such things, he states that humans believe that bathing in dragon's blood will grant immortality, eating dragon flesh will grant infinite mana, and using the crushed-up dragon bones will cure any illness. Zagan doesn't blame Valefor for hiding her true identity, but seeing Valefor sulking, Zagan wonders what he can do to grow closer to Valefor. Flashing back to when he was homeless, Zagan remembers a time when other kids his age gave him some food, inspiring Zagan to offer up some of the soup Neffy had made. Seeing Valefor disgusted, Zagan threatens to erase Valefor if she disrespects Neffy's cooking, prompting Valefor to give the soup a taste. Surprised by how delicious it is, Valefor ends up slurping down the entire bowl, pleasing Zagan and Neffy. With Zagan returning back to his studies, he reminds Valefor she is to accompany Neffy. But when Valefor says she'll attack Neffy and escape, Zagan reminds Valefor he could simply expose the fact that she is a dragon. But more importantly, Zagan knows Neffy is far stronger than Valefor herself. As the girls begin hanging out some clothes to dry, Zagan chooses to spy on the girls, hearing Valefor asking to be called for, all whilst admitting that Zagan is actually quite handsome. For surprised at how strong Zagan is, knowing that he was completely holding back, yet he was easily able to defeat her, but Zagan wonders why For is so fixated on growing stronger. Zagan finds it weird that a child dragon is living amongst the humans, but at the same time For hears that Neffy serves Zagan since he treats her like an equal, something For admits she has never experienced. With Neffy and Zagan saddened by such a fact, we follow For willingly help out around the castle in the coming days, all whilst Zagan finds no leads on true demons, wondering if Marcoges is hiding knowledge in his castle somewhere. Just then, For enters the room informing Zagan that dinner is ready. But as Zagan prepares to head to dinner, For reminds Zagan that she can attack him at any time. Reminded of Barbados himself swearing that he'll defeat Zagan one day, Zagan openly welcomes For's challenge, shocking For. With the trio sitting down for a homely meal, For finally apologizes for attacking Zagan out of nowhere, pleasing Zagan as For is learning. Zagan tells Neffy that he'll be bringing For with him to further explore Marcoges' castle. But this annoys For as she reminds Zagan that knowledge is very rare and should be kept a secret from others. Zagan states that knowledge should be shared among sorcerers, confusing For as she wonders why Zagan doesn't just force her to submit to him. But Zagan reminds For that she is still only a child, something that makes For cry. Panicking, Zagan tries giving her a head pat to calm her down, reminding For that being associated with an archdemon like himself will give For some protection. Grateful for the advice, Zagan and Neffy put For in her bed, seeing as she fell asleep after dinner. But Neffy is pleased at how nice Zagan is to everyone. Seeing For grasping onto a spoon, Zagan attempts to retrieve it, accidentally getting his finger grabbed by For, who mistakes Zagan to be her father. Neffy points out how For is like their child, embarrassing herself and Zagan, but the lovebirds hold hands, seeing as they don't actually mind the idea of becoming a family. With it already being a week since For has begun living with Zagan and Neffy, she is seen logging her adventures around the castle, starting off by writing about the cleaning and cooking she does with Neffy. For does admit that it's nice to get praised, but For is still confused about Neffy and Zagan's relationship, uttering that she had noticed Neffy sneaking up to Zagan whilst he sleeps on his throne, only to stare at him from different angles. For also writes about Nephi continuing to make promises to herself, but writing about Zagan, for knows that Zagan studies a lot in the library. Occasionally, Nephi would visit Zagan to learn sorcery from him, but For is weirded out at why Nephi continues to sit on Zagan's lap. Plus, Zagan seems to hesitate when wanting to stroke Nephi's head. For sadly reveals herself to Zagan and Nephi, unable to further write about the lovebirds, seeing as they return to normal after discovering they're being watched. But as the next day arrives, we see For being introduced to Manuela. Instantly falling in love with For, Manuela picks out a new outfit for For, bidding the trio farewell as Zagan notices For acting strange. Nephi points out that For simply loves her new dress, both watching as For adorably thanks them for buying her something, only to hold their hands as if she were their child. Zagan notes how warm such a moment feels. But as the trio head through town, we cut to Chastille hopelessly wandering through town, holding back her tears as she seems sad having lost her armor and sword. Chastille prays that Zagan and Nephi live a long and prosperous life. But as Chastille heads through town, she suddenly runs into our trio. Seeing For with them, Chastille mistakes her to be Zagan and Nephi's child, but Zagan quickly clears up any misunderstandings. Zagan introduces Chastille to For as one of Nephi's friends, wondering why Chastille is in her casual fit today, but suddenly Chastille's 3 knights arrive having been searching for her. Zagan suddenly senses bloodlust from For, ordering her to stand down, seeing as a fight would injure the surrounding town's folks. But as For retracts her claws, we see Chastille being dragged away to speak with Clavel. Zagan wonders why For is so triggered, but For simply utters that the Angelic Knights are a sorcerer's sworn enemy, something Zagan can't really blame For believing in. Having made it underground, For is amazed to see Marcosius's castle underground, but suddenly For smells something familiar. Recognizing the mana and the cave there, For utters that the castle is linked to the dragon somehow, but with Zagan giving For permission to explore the castle, he opens the gate with his crest. With the trio entering the castle, Nephi clings to Zagan out of fear, prompting Zagan to hold Nephi's hand, but For wonders what the object in the center of the room is. Zagan suspects it to be a golem or chimera Marcosius created to help guard the castle, but seeing as Marcosius is gone, Zagan doesn't want to mess with it. Exploring the castle a bit more, For points out a magic circle with some draconic patterns, something Zagan would have never realized if it weren't for, garnering praise from Zagan and Nephi. Seeing as the magic circle is a door of some kind, For begins infusing her mana into the circle, but at the same time Zagan notices Nephi is agitated. Realizing that Nephi wants to be praised as well, Zagan quickly strokes Nephi's head, but suddenly the lovebirds snap out of their daze, seeing as For has opened a secret passage for them. Heading down some stairs, our trio end up discovering an even greater library filled with hundreds of books, but Zagan prioritizes searching for books on demons and archdemon crests. Off to the side, For asks how Zagan was able to read Nephi's mind, but Zagan states he simply grew closer to her, something that makes For jealous. Zagan reminds For that she is free to stay and grow close to them for as long as he lives, something that makes For cling on to Zagan. But suddenly For takes out a book on the 12 sacred swords. Intrigued, Zagan swiftly schemes through the books, confirming his suspicions as the archdemon crest share similar symbols to the ones engraved on the sacred swords. Seeing as he'll need to study the sacred swords to learn more about his crest, we cut over to Chastille, who kneels before Raphael only to greet the strongest of all sacred sword wielders with the greatest amount of kills. Getting straight to the point, Raphael asks how many sorcerers Chastille has slain, but refusing to be bullied by Raphael, Chastille utters that people should not boast about their kills. Chastille's knights ask that Chastille refrain from insulting her superior, but Raphael simply laughs, commending how bold Chastille is. Sadly, Raphael states that Chastille will have to be slain, but before Chastille's knights can convince Raphael otherwise, Clavel himself appears, ordering Raphael to stand down. Raphael states that he could care less about what Clavel has to say, instead demanding to know where Chastiel's sacred sword is, seeing as he'll be taking her sword after he lobs off Chastiel's head. Clavel is disgusted by what Raphael is planning, prompting Chastiel to state that sacred sword wielders are meant to uphold their duties to the church and not do as they please. Annoyed by Chastiel's words, Raphael draws his sword ready to cut down Chastiel, but suddenly Clavel orders Raphael to halt, choosing to reinstate Chastiel's sword, seeing as she'll need it if Raphael ever attacks her. Chastiel is weirded out, seeing as Raphael had left only after she had reclaimed her sword, receiving a strange letter later that evening. That night, we see Zagan being grilled by Barbados for taking an Emir child. Zagan mentions how the girl is a sorcerer Barbados is acquainted with, but as Barbados racks his brain for who it could be, he mentions rumors of Vale for being a dragon, completely failing to realize that the little girl is Valefur. Zagan reasons that for being a dragon should be kept a secret, instead making up an excuse that the little girl was adopted to be his second apprentice. But changing topics, Barbados reports that the sorcerer hunter has arrived in town. Apparently, Raphael has slain 499 sorcerers, and rumor has it that Zagan will be targeted next. Zagan still can't believe a single human with a single sacred sword can rack up so many kills, but Barbados utters that Raphael could have consumed a dragon to grow stronger, something that may explain For's hatred towards angelic knights. As the boys share some more booze, Zagan says Barbados can borrow some books from Archdemon castle. But as the boys chat more about Raphael, we see Raphael marching up to them from behind, only to draw their attention with his absurd aura. With Barbados on high alert, we see the tavern clear out upon seeing Raphael, prompting Barbados to rush Raphael with a spell, but before Raphael can engage, Zagan negates Barbados' spell. Zagan states that he doesn't sense any bloodlust from Raphael, asking if Raphael would like a drink, cutting to a few moments later where Zagan and Raphael are face to face. Zagan asks what a dragon slayer would want from an archdemon, but Raphael simply utters he wanted to meet Zagan, seeing as he had saved Chastiel a few times. Zagan continues by asking why a man who has slain so many sorcerers is willingly having a drink with one. But Raphael states he was merely doing his duty, confusing Zagan as Raphael doesn't seem that hostile. Raphael takes the chance to ask if Chastiel was a strong opponent when he faced her, but when Raphael hears that Chastiel was the strongest Zagan had faced so far, Raphael warns Zagan that the church may be after Chastiel. Weirded out by Raphael's warning, Zagan hears that Chastiel has been abandoned by the church since she refused orders, but just like that, Raphael takes his leave. Still in awe as to why Raphael had told him such a thing, Zagan warns Raphael to not step out of line, something that amuses Raphael, seeing as Zagan is very scary. Heeding Raphael's warning, Zagan asks Barbados to check on Chastiel, offering up some extra books in exchange for the help. Reluctantly, Barbados teleports away, leaving Zagan to return to his castle only to greet Nephi, who had been waiting for him. Adorably, for had also tried staying up to greet Zagan when he returned, but sadly she fell asleep first. Zagan praises For working so hard every day, glad that she has found people she can spend her life with. But Zagan is more curious as to who may have slain For's parents. Hearing Nephi promising to live alongside Zagan forever, the two lovebirds catch a glimpse of each other's beauty, both leaning in close for a kiss, but suddenly Barbados interrupts. Having visited Chastiel, Barbados shows off Chastiel knocked out with some poison, prompting Nephi to place For aside as she rushes to cure Chastiel. Having awoken from the commotion, For notices Chastiel in possession of a sacred gear, triggered by the presence of an angelic knight. Bearing her claws, For rushes Chastiel, but luckily Zagan intercepts the strike. For demands to know why Zagan is standing up for an angelic knight, revealing that her father was slain by someone wielding a sacred sword. But Zagan points out that Chastiel couldn't have been the culprit. Zagan states that creating unnecessary enemies is a foolish thing to do. Plus, in order to truly enact her revenge, Zagan instructs For to track down the real culprit and torture them. Seeing as Zagan is right, For retracts her claws, cutting to a few moments later where Chastiel has awoken from her slumber. Hearing from Zagan that Nephi cured her, Chasteel suddenly remembers receiving a cryptic letter that led her to a cloaked figure that mentioned that they were a faction in the church that wanted to coexist with sorcerers. Chasteel says she never saw the cloaked figure's face, but recognized their voice, but was surprised when the figure offered to protect her, making her wonder if they are acquainted with Clavel. The figure states that Chasteel will have limited time to make a decision, but the figure does ask Chasteel to cry for Oroba if she ever needs help, the figure's supposed leader. With the figure leaving, Chasteel had returned back to her office, noticing some tea that had been served to her, but unknowingly the tea she drank had been poisoned. Luckily, Barbados had rescued her, but Zagan asks if Chasteel suspects anyone of the poisoning attempt, both ruling out Raphael, seeing as he could have cut down Chasteel instead of poisoning her. With Zagan permitting Chasteel to stay for a bit longer, he prepares to leave, but Chasteel asks for Zagan to keep her company. Zagan says Nephi is more qualified for the job, but seeing as Nephi is asleep, Zagan agrees to read a bit whilst in her room. Chasteel scolds herself for trying to make a move on Zagan, but having easily fallen asleep, Chasteel is forced to don a maid outfit the next day, seeing as she'll have to work if she wants to stay at the castle. Spotting Four glaring at her, Chasteel tries to make friends with Four, but Four cries that she doesn't want to speak with Chasteel, running off. Zagan tells Chasteel about Four's parents being slain by a sacred sword user, asking Chasteel not to feel guilty seeing as it was out of her control, but later that day Chasteel's scream can be heard all over the castle. Zagan finds it funny that Four has pranked Chasteel with a frog, but Chasteel wonders why Zagan is so soft around Four. Zagan voices how relieved he is that Chasteel is more calm than she was last night, surprising Chasteel seeing as Zagan cares for her. But later that night, we see Four giving Chasteel the nickname of Tailhead in her logbook. In the coming days, Four continues to prank Chasteel with various creatures. But as Four continues to log her pranks in her logbook, Zagan suddenly asks to speak with Four. At the same time, we see Chasteel and Nephi decompressing with a warm bath. Amazing Chasteel as the castle is quite massive, but Chasteel flusters Nephi when she wonders if Zagan bathes with Nephi when they're alone. Zagan is seen reminding Four to go easy on Chasteel, suspecting that Four needs to leave and deal with personal things. But Zagan reminds Four that she is always welcome to come back anytime. That night, we see Four reliving the moment when her father was slain by a sacred blade user, suddenly waking up only to sneak into Chasteel's room with her claws drawn. Luckily, Zagan has convinced Four to leave Chasteel be, but as Zagan sleeps on his throne, he's suddenly awoken by Nephi, who reports Four has disappeared.